My name is Lon Safko, co-author of the Social Media Bible, published by John Wiley & Sons, the most comprehensive book ever written on the subject of social media. And today we are here with Scott Clough, an avid online gamer, and he's going to talk about online gaming, social media, and how all the social networks come together. So Scott, I'm glad to have you here. Hi.
Hi, glad to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be cool. Online gaming, what a phenomenon. And I got to say that I've been following it, and people get really into it, and I didn't understand how much fun it was until I did the research for the book and actually got involved in a kind of a car race demolition derby game called Flat Out 2 about 2 weeks ago. And being able to play online and compete and work with people from around the world, from all over the entire globe at any given time of the day, I'm absolutely fascinated by this subject now. So can you tell the listeners a little bit about who you are and what your background is?
Yeah, sure. I was playing tabletop role-playing games since probably, the early 1980s. I started with games like Dungeons and Dragons, and honestly, as a teenager, I was probably spending almost all my free time doing so. I then moved into playing computer games, especially ones that had elements of role-playing games in them. Games like Zork was a very early one, very simplistic. Then I moved up to playing games such as Ultima, Might and Magic, Bard's Tale, and then they started making some of the Dungeons and Dragons into computer games. I got involved into the online role-playing. About 1996, I went through a divorce and had suddenly lots of time. And in 1997, Ultima Online, the first of the genre, came out. And it gave me something to fill up my time. I played Ultima Online until EverQuest was released. And that was probably the online game that really made this whole genre successful, because the numbers became staggering, how many people were playing. It had graphics that were just amazing. It had a world that was in full realistic, and I think all the current big games owe a lot to EverQuest. I used to play games with almost all my free time, but in later years I've learned to limit my playing. I also try to make sure it doesn't dominate my life, and I stopped playing particular ones when I realized I'm not being entertained, but then I always have to look for something else to move on to. So I've tried a lot of the games over the years. I wish I had tried the car one. I'll have to look that one up.
Yeah, I was absolutely fascinated. I kind of like the Sims. I kind of like a simulated game. And then I got my brother. I told him to go out and buy a copy of it, and he lives in Denver, my brother Ed, and we started playing together. And now we kind of tag team other drivers from around the world, and it's kind of like the Mario Andretti or the Earnhardt family. It's really exciting. I finally understand it when you do it.
Yeah, actually, gaming also led to my current career.
Oh.
It was kind of interesting. I got really interested in fixing up computers for myself, and then I was building bigger and badder machines for friends and family even. And one day I was online on one of the games, and I was looking for another job, and the guy who I was gaming with never met. I had said to him I was thinking of a new job, and he said, "Would you be willing to relocate?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, as long as it was Arizona." Next day I had an interview set up, and since then I've been working in computer support and eventually ending up here at Hewlett-Packard.
Wow, so gaming actually got you your career.
Yes, it did.
That's really cool. Can you tell our listeners what the term MMORPG? It's a big term, and it's always thrown around when we're talking about online games.
Well, it was a term coined by Richard Garriott, the creator of Ultima Online. Means massively multiplayer online role-playing game. Yeah, mouthful.
But that really does explain it, though, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, it gives an explanation of it. The term was kind of coined to differentiate the different types of games that were out there at the time. And you got to realize this kind of game is an evolution of, and it's still in process. What had happened is back in the day, people were playing the very games I spoke of, such as Ultima, some of the Dungeons and Dragons games. Mm-hmm. and they were very active, but the thing they kept saying they wanted to do was to be able to have a friend come over like you with your brother and play head-on-head or in the same world with it. And it was just a natural interest to say, hey, if we can make it so you can play with 2-4 friends, why not do it over the new medium called the Internet back at that time? Mm-hmm. And as you know, Richard Garriott is the creator of Ultima Online, which was the first one. And actually, it was interesting because they had 8 different versions of their standalone game before they came out with Ultima Online, and amazingly enough, it's still out there.
And it's being played in huge numbers.
Yeah. Actually, probably the biggest one is World of Warcraft right now. Everybody probably sees that on the news. It advertises it has 10 million players worldwide.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes, it is.
And that gets back to the massive, the first M in that definition.
Yes.
And I understand that as well, because, again, as playing the game myself, I can play against the computer, where the bots or the AI, artificial intelligent cars, will race against me or crash into me. And that's a lot of fun. But to actually be playing against other humans, I could definitely see the appeal where you can get online and actually compete with other people and not just the machine.
Yes, but it also has some drawbacks. Because whereas a bot is going to react in a set mode based on the programming, and that has been developed more each year, some players that you go out there can be unethical. And they use cheats, hacks, exploits, as it's called out there, to get the edge on you rather than by skill.
Well, and I've noticed that's absolutely true. You brought up a really good point. Every once in a while, we will play against somebody, and all of a sudden, this car will come out of nowhere doing 200 miles an hour and just clean our clocks. And it's like, how the heck did that happen? That's not right.
That is one of the things that frustrates people in the games.
Well, and what type of people? What's the demographic of an online game player?
You know, it's really interesting. I've met people in all the demographics, I would say. This is a hobby that has no separation by race, sex, religion. You know, a lot of the people out there try to classify the online player as, say, a teenage boy, you know. But I've run into family groups that play, mom, dads, and their kids. I've met professionals who play, everything from computer engineers to lawyers to police officers to soldiers sitting over in Iraq.
Even book authors.
I've also run into famous people. But authors have played, actors have played. I think even Mr. T has admitted he plays World of Warcraft.
Well, it really is addicting, and you're right. In doing the research and coming across the statistics, the demographic really is all over the board. And the other thing that kind of surprises me, you think it's a male-dominated hobby or fascination, but women are out there playing too.
Quite a few of them. I've actually talked with quite a few of them. They actually tend to be the more chatty that you have conversations with.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Let's get right down to it. What do you think the actual appeal? I mean, why do you think when people get involved in this, it can become an obsession? But what's the appeal? Why do people like to do this?
You know, the biggest appeal is the ability to be another person or another entity. You can be a hero or a villain, just depending on how you want to play or the aspects of the game. There are some people out there who are dedicated into the role-playing aspect, and it's interesting because the games have started to have to modify to get there, so they have dedicated role-playing servers where everything you say or do is supposed to be in character. There are other servers that are dedicated to player versus player, and that's a real big growth area currently. And I would say most of the arguments in the games are about character balance in player versus player. In case you weren't aware of it, that's where players kill, defeat other real players in the game, and usually you get some type of reward. But I think the real attachment in the games is the community aspect. Usually most of the games allow you to form up a group, usually called a guild. And the guilds, you get to display your name over the name of your character. You get to solve harder quests, kill the toughest monsters while working with people. And they do things such as raids where they get like 50 people plus to go after a single creature. And while you're doing this, you chat and you develop friendships. I've even known people to get married and divorced as a result from playing this game.
Is that right, really?
Yes.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Jeez. So, yes. I have to totally agree with you, and that's why I thought that online gaming, really should be part of social media. A lot of people don't quite see it initially as being part of social media, but it is a form of media that really builds a social, trusted network. Do you agree?
Oh, definitely. And, the games appeal to both the casual gamer and the hardcore gamer, which is really nice. Some people just like to go in and play for a short little while, and other people basically spend every free moment they have on it.
Well, there is a certain kind. I think there is some endorphin or some type of adrenaline. I mean, whatever the feel-good chemicals are, they're definitely released during the game because it is fun. And I think the collaboration, as you mentioned, I think is a huge part of it, where you can actually team up, form a strategy, and then feel that endorphin of success.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of thrill that, if after 8 hours of playing, say, on a Saturday, killing the toughest monster in the game that nobody has ever killed,
Yeah, there's a satisfaction to that. Why do you think businesses, small business, medium business, Fortune 500s, do you think because of the huge, massive amount of numbers that are involved, do you think that there's any reason that we ought to be watching this in terms of maybe understanding how there could be some possible revenue or community building in this genre?
Oh, absolutely. It's something to watch because it's a new and developing technology, and games such as World of Warcraft have shown the worldwide appeal of such games. But, it's not just the games itself that are being sold. There's now a thriving industry on the items that are in the game, virtual items. There's a third-party market on game guides. There's help websites. There's even companies out there that are selling online money, gold, and characters for real-world cash. Now, most of the games are like, they're trying to shut this down, this behavior, and most players do not like it. And also, some of the games are based on the current entertainment industry. There's a Matrix game, Pirates of the Caribbean, Star Wars, and there's even a Star Trek game in pre-production right now.
Wow. That is pretty extensive. And, yeah, I forgot about the whole Hollywood aspect of it. That could actually be huge. When I wrote the chapter on virtual worlds, and we talked about Second Life, and some of the other virtual worlds, we also noticed that there's money exchanged within Second Life. As, of course, you probably know, Linden's, where some games outlaw it, some games don't. Is that kind of what you were talking about, where people are allowing you to buy advantages into the game?
Yeah, there's online money. Usually, since most of the games are fantasy, it's gold. But there's also items in the game that people desire. Say, for instance, a really powerful sword that's a very rare drop. There are organizations out there that go and what's called camping. They sit there and wait for the monster that has it to respawn, and then when they get it, rather than using it for their own character, they turn it over to their company that sells it online. And I've seen back on some of the eBay equivalent sites for selling some of this stuff, I've seen items sell for hundreds of dollars.
So they're actually harvesting, basically, key components of the game. That's hysterical. That's really funny. That's a great idea, though. I mean, you got to love entrepreneurism.
Well, yeah, the problem is then they start spamming in the game that they sell these items, the gold that they get. And in some of the areas, some of the companies, they have characters running 24 hours just farming, where you're just killing things again and again and again to get the gold, and it actually makes the area unusable by the regular players. So complaints get raised up. And also there's a feeling when you have a guy who comes in who say he's a level 70 because he bought an account already up there. Yeah. He doesn't know how to play the character well in the game, and so he makes mistakes and that get the group killed.
That absolutely makes sense. In real world, I would, I guess, call that a lottery winner.
Yes, exactly.
Doesn't know how to play the game, just has the money. How about, what do you feel about online advertising, in-game advertising?
about it is it matters how it's done. I agree there needs to be advertising. There's a lot of opportunity to advertise in the games, especially when you cross into area zones. To balance the load of on the servers, the gamers are usually placed in regional zones, and when you cross from one area to another, you get a flash screen that comes up. Now, some of the companies put advice on how to play, but, I don't have a problem if they put advertising, especially if it helps keep the revenue down. And, there's nothing wrong with, say, in the racing game to have billboards with real-world advertising. So...
Yeah, as long as it's done that it doesn't interrupt the gameplay and you can offset some of the costs.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, there's three different kinds of ways to play the game as far as, because you had mentioned keep the cost down. There's free-to-play, like Second Life. Then there's subscription. And then there's buy the game and play. Can you speak to any of those three models? Have you had any experience in those?
Yeah, actually, I've participated at least in two of them. The buy the game and then pay a subscription cost is probably the most common. Games as EverQuest, World of Online, Age of Conan's, Warhammer Online use that. And probably the biggest reason people would leave the game is because they hit a point where I'm spending this money and I'm not getting the enjoyment out of it. Mm-hmm. Then you have game systems like Guild Wars where you pay for the initial game and they make the rest of the time free. And I've always kind of wondered what their profit margins are like on both of them. In Guild Wars, they sell later expansions, but so do some of the other games. Like EverQuest is famous for having expansions probably about every year or two.
That makes sense. Yeah, with the Flat Out 2, basically you buy the games $39.95, and then to play with other players online, you go through something called GameSpy, and it's completely free, which I thought was a kind of a pretty cool service that they're going to provide that for free. And there's no in-game advertising or additional cost whatsoever, so it kind of makes me wonder how they can afford it, unless, of course, the network is actually driving the sale of the games.
Well, in GameSpy, when you load up GameSpy, you'll see some advertising in it.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even notice it, but yeah, that's absolutely true. So GameSpy is a company that provides that type of service for other games as well?
Yes. If you were to go to GameSpy's website, you would see that they provide the service for quite a number of games.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that. Well, okay, that's pretty cool. What else in this gigantic genre of online gaming? What else would you think we should talk about?
Well, I guess I should talk about first what do players, how do they play? Earlier I mentioned there's a casual gamer and a hardcore gamer, but that's not the only way they divide. In the games, you also get to find what kind of player you play. You'll hear, if you ever go online, you'll see someone saying, I need a tank. That's a character who takes damage during an encounter, usually a big buff fighter, and he can hold the monster's attention while healers keep them healed, and DPSers, we call them damage per second, they do the damage to kill the monster. So you'll hear that language talked in the game. Then there's people, how they act. I think earlier I mentioned we have griefers that go out and try to hurt other players using exploits and such. Mm-hmm. But we also have max minners. Those are people who play the game solely on statistics. And they can be frustrating to talk to because they'll say something, why are you playing that class with an elf? If you played it as this, you would... Then there's the role players I talked about, and then there's the elite people. Those are young gamers who use elite speak, if you haven't covered that with anyone else yet. That's where they say, you are using just the letters, and it annoys a lot of us older people. What else to talk about? You asked about some of the history, like with the downsides, because I've seen divorces. Mm-hmm. I've had online friends who've told me they've lost their jobs, and sometimes friends, family, over how much time they're spending in the game. There is occasionally a news report out there with people who get hurt or go to the hospital because they spend too much time in the game, but I should say that with a game like Warhammer with 10 million people worldwide and you hear one report, that's an exception, not the rule.
Yeah.
The good news is, though, game companies are aware that people are becoming addicted to these kind of games. And several of the games have warnings that will appear as you log in saying, hey, you need to get up and spend some time around. And what's even better is some of the games you can actually set a timer that says after you've been in the game for a couple hours, it'll come up and say, hey, you need to take a break.
It kind of reminds you like your wife.
Exactly. I'd say, but let's talk about what's really the downside and then talk what I think is where the upside will go. The biggest downside to these games is that most of the games are simply kill something to advance, find something to make yourself stronger, and your quests are you're going out looking for something and coming back. There's very little real role-playing that gets involved on that because it's a computer. You know, all the quests are given out by the server itself. So it has to be command-orientated. Whereas if you're playing a tabletop game, you have a player who can change the environment depending on what you're doing. So for a lot of the games, they're very repetitive, especially when you get to the high end, when you're near the end of the game, you can't level anymore. It becomes, well, what am I going to do now? I've kind of done all of this. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest problem that the game companies have had, is keeping people. Right now, World of Warcraft just released a new expansion, and they've reported a flood of players have come back to the game. So people had left, they watched their numbers go down, and so they released a new version of it, and people have come back. And so the company is aware they have to already be working on the next expansion to keep these people interested. But the other problem you have is, what do you do when someone harasses you in the game? You talked about the guy who appears in a car that goes 200-plus miles and zooms by and say he wins the event. You know, well, he just took away from you.
Yeah.
What about people who get you killed, who use cheat and hacks to make your gaming experience poor? So you're out there trying to kill a super monster, and the guy appears and pulls more monsters on you, more than you can handle. Now you're dead, what we call a wipe, where everybody is killed, and you have to start all over. Well, in the real world, if you acted in such a manner, you could get law enforcement involved, you could talk to a child's parents. In other words, there's repercussions.
Right.
But when you're playing these games, you're anonymous. And a lot of these younger people, and some of the people I think are kind of twisted, feel they're above the law.
Yeah. Well, it's just like in real life.
The games.
Is there any type of I know in forums you can flame them, you can get them knocked off of the forum for trolling and other type of inappropriate behavior. Is there any way, or how about this idea? Is there any way where a bunch of people within the game can identify someone who's not playing by the rules, kind of team up on them, and the strategy would be to take them out?
Sometimes. I remember when I was younger, I camped a guy who I killed for 48 hours. Long enough for his corpse with all his items to disappear, and killed him every time he appeared. But that's really the exception, and who wants to spend 48 hours sitting constantly at your computer, you know?
Yeah.
You can't police bad behavior currently, so they're working on methods, they're trying to work on it, and I give kudos to all the game systems because they're trying.
Good.
But what will be coming next? Well, I was just talking with some other gamers just the other day, and we were discussing how with now 64-bit operating systems and computers out there,
broadband,
eventually we figure that the games are going to have a more virtual feel. Controllers such as like the Wii uses, you know, we can see that being brought over into this kind of world. And it would be really neat if instead of sitting in front of your monitor, you can look in maybe a more virtual reality. And you, instead of just pressing a key button to swing a sword, if you had like a sword hilt in a Wii type of format and you actually swing it.
So you have actual physical interaction.
Yeah, I think that's where the games are going to go on to, is more and more of a real physical interaction. And that is exciting to envision.
Yeah, I never thought about that. But yeah, the Wii game, WII, for those who didn't understand what we were talking about, has tremendous physical interaction, everything from bowling to tennis to golf to, well, just about anything that's physical. Yeah, that would be an incredible interface. Good point.
I can see that as the next evolution in the gaming world, and especially since they're talking Net 2.0, which is supposed to remove some of the bottlenecks in the Internet. I can see that environment also as the bandwidth increases, I can see more gaming content being out there.
And that's a good point, too. You brought up broadband, and really the gameplay right now, as it has always been, is really limited to either the speed of the computer in the old days or really the speed of the internet connection nowadays.
Exactly.
And, of course, that is dramatically increasing every single day.
Yes, most of what you see when someone's playing a game is on their computer. All the graphic rendering is all done from their local machine. The amount of data, if you were to look at the packets that are being sent, usually are just XYZ coordinates of where everybody is in relationship and damage results back.
Okay, so that's a really good point. So that when you download the, what is it called, thin client or the software on your own game, it's your own PC that's really doing the massive amount of computations necessary to generate the graphics,
yes.
And the only information that's being transmitted is really just the changes that are taking place.
Exactly. So when you're in your car game and you're driving and you do a shift and you say, now I'm going this fast, you're really just translated to the server that I did a shift. It comes back and says, yes, you can now have more speed, and it accelerates your movement through the world.
Okay, so really, still some of the bottleneck could be on your own graphics card and CPU.
Yeah. In fact, a lot of the games allow you to change the level of graphics and on your home PC, so it's obvious that it's your machine that's generating them at that point.
Okay. Lower graphics, faster play.
Yeah. Yes. And, we still get lag out there on the Internet, and people get disconnected because of a poor Internet connection. So I think as Net 2.0 becomes a reality and reliability hopefully goes up, I think some of the gaming styles will change also.
Awesome. Absolutely true. And just to finish up a thought that you had brought up earlier about people kind of becoming addicting and spending too much time, it's the personality, not so much the game, because I know they do take a bad rap where you hear a teenager goes out and does something stupid because he plays the game all the time and he mimics it in real life. But really, I mean, you can look at gambling is an issue. Anything really that kind of generates endorphins, you got to keep it under control, because you can overeat, you can overdrink, you can overplay.
Exactly. I enjoy the fact that when I switch a game, I usually take a time period off and enjoy real life. And I've come to the realization that I need to do that and not live in the game environment. So I went from being a very hardcore gamer to more of a casual gamer, though I'm probably still more hardcore than a lot of other people out there.
Well, honestly, you know more about this industry than anybody I've ever talked to. That's really great. If a business wanted to kind of study this, or an individual wanted to kind of study this, is there any websites out there that talks about MMORPGs or about online gaming? Is there any place that you can kind of go on the internet to find out more information on this?
Yeah, actually, if you're interested in statistics, there's a great site, mmorgchart.com, and they actually chart how many people are playing in certain games, the basic activities, and you can actually look at how the games have gone up and down in their numbers. Fascinating numbers, and the runner of the site tries to put it all in scientific methods, and he tells you where his data comes from, so you can make your own evaluations on the reliability. If you're more casual and you just want to know what your kids are getting involved in, you can go out on the web and look for sites like Alakazim's. You can go to the manufacturer's World of Warcraft and get information off of those. You can also buy magazines such as PC Gamer is one example. And you can always tell those magazines because they'll have screenshots of the various games on their cover usually. But really, if you just want to know about the games, just go to any place that sells all the software, such as Best Buy, Fry's Electronics, and you'll see they have their own sections, their own shelves, and you can look at the game boxes and read what they're claiming that their world that gives to you, and you can actually buy even their game guides that tell you how the game is played.
Ah, okay. Are the online games rated like some of the Xbox games?
Rated in appropriateness?
Yeah.
Yes, some of them are.
Oh, okay.
Age of Conan, for example, is one that's not recommended for younger children because they wanted to stay true to the artwork and the world of Conan. So scantily clad women, super buff guys. So it's just the graphics alone are not recommended for pre-teens.
Okay. And that was another good point that you brought up about the manufacturers having their own sites as well, where you can just type in World of Warcraft and it'll immediately take you to the manufacturer's site as well as some of the forums and other popular sites.
Exactly. I recommend that anyone who wants to get into the gaming first make sure your computer is up there enough and make sure that you can afford to spend the time and money. But also go to the websites of the companies that you're thinking of doing it and just troll the forums. Just go through them and read what people are saying about the game before you make this investment.
Really good advice. I really appreciate that. Anything else you'd like to add?
I guess the final thing I should throw out is this isn't a cheap world anymore. In 2006, over $1 billion was spent on these type of games.
This is billion with a B.
E, yes.
See, and that's why businesses need to watch where this is headed, because when you're talking about $1 billion and 10 million people in one game, there's got to be a way to monetize, if not for anything else, just the social network aspect of it.
Exactly.
That's terrific. I'd really like to thank Scott Clough, Avid online gamer, for being here with us today and talking about social networking and online gaming. Really, Scott, thank you.
You're welcome. It's always fun to talk about it.
This is cool. This has been Lon Safko, the co-author of the Social Media Bible. Be sure to check out our other valuable social media tactics, tools, and strategies that can be found in the Social Media Bible book and its companion website, www.thesocialmediabible.com. And for more information about me, Lon Safko, please, by all means, visit my website at www.lonsafko.com. And again, thank you, Scott, for being here today.
It was my pleasure.